After breaking up with my girlfriend, I still kept the habit of grinding coffee beans every morning. Before I knew it, autumn was here again, and I found myself staring at that expensive espresso machine we bought together. I finally worked up the courage to message Elodie. "Hey, wanna give us another shot?" To my surprise, she replied quickly. "Jayson, no, I'm with someone else now. Stop trying to win me back with these sentimental gestures. It's pathetic." But I didn't get angry at all. Instead, I calmly typed back, "So do you and Trevor drink coffee together?" What happened next completely shattered everything I thought I knew about our relationship. Turns out, she had been playing games I never saw coming. And when she saw me moving on with someone new, her true colors finally showed. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. "I'm downstairs at your apartment," I said quietly into the phone, my voice heavy with exhaustion. I brought 12 bags of premium coffee. The silence on Elodie's end was deafening. I could almost hear her brain trying to process what I'd just said, as if the words made no sense in any language she knew. Then came her sharp intake of breath, followed by that familiar tone she used when she thought someone was being completely ridiculous. "What did you just say? Repeat what you just said," she demanded. I didn't expect Elodie to have such a hard time understanding simple English. After a pause, I calmly repeated myself. "The coffee roastery downtown is closing permanently. They're selling everything at 70% off. I bought their entire premium collection." "So how many bags did you buy?" Elodie's voice suddenly became razor sharp. Over the phone, I could practically hear her losing her mind. She shouted, "Jayson, have you completely lost it?" I held the phone a little farther from my ear, waiting for the storm to pass. After what felt like an eternity, when Elodie had calmed down slightly, I carefully brought the phone back and asked the question that had been burning in my mind. "So do you and Trevor drink coffee together?" "Go away." Elodie screamed the words at her phone and hung up immediately. I stood there in the parking lot of her apartment complex, surrounded by 12 bags of the finest coffee beans money could buy, looking up at her third-floor window and sighing deeply. All my careful planning hadn't accounted for one simple fact. Elodie had moved on. These 12 bags of premium coffee, each one costing more than most people spend on groceries in a week, suddenly felt like the most expensive mistake of my life. I sat down on the concrete barrier near the building entrance, feeling completely lost and uncertain about what to do next. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts, hoping to find someone who might want to help me deal with this ridiculous amount of coffee. But it was already past 9 in the evening, and everyone had probably already had their caffeine fix for the day. I sighed again, stood up and started loading the bags into my car when I heard footsteps behind me. Elodie had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, and she looked absolutely furious. She stood there glaring at me with ice-cold eyes, not saying a single word, just staring at me with this mixture of confusion and anger that I knew all too well. I tried to lighten the mood by holding up one of the coffee bags with a weak smile. "Ethiopian single origin, light roast. Your favorite, remember?" Elodie kept that cold expression on her face, walked over without saying anything, and took 6 bags of coffee from my hands. Then she turned around and started walking back toward her building. "Wait," I called out, unable to stop myself. Elodie turned back to look at me, pursing her lips and raising one eyebrow slightly. I had been with Elodie for 3 years, and I knew all her little expressions and gestures by heart. I was so familiar with them that she didn't even need to speak for me to understand exactly what she was thinking. Right now, that raised eyebrow, and that particular look, meant exactly one thing. Say what you need to say quickly, and get to the point. I paused for a moment, feeling awkward, then quietly said 6 bags of premium coffee, $420. Elodie's eyes widened in complete disbelief, and I met her gaze without flinching. After what felt like a very long minute, I heard Elodie let out a bitter laugh. "Fine," she said coldly. "Jayson, you've really learned something new, haven't you? If I ever talk to you again after this, I might as well throw myself off a bridge." Elodie transferred the money to my account without looking at me again and quickly turned to leave. But before she could get very far, I watched her angrily kick a decorative stone that was part of the landscaping around the building. The stone was solid and heavy, but her foot definitely wasn't. Her face immediately contorted in pain as she grabbed her toe, trying not to show how much it hurt. But even in obvious pain, she pretended like absolutely nothing had happened, and limped away toward the building entrance, maintaining what was left of her dignity. As I watched her disappear into the building, I couldn't help but think about how we'd gotten to this point. 3 months ago, Elodie had promised with tears in her eyes that she would wait for me no matter how long it took. She'd said that what we had was too special to throw away, that she'd rather be alone forever than be with anyone else. Now here I was, standing in a parking lot at 9:30 at night, holding 6 bags of expensive coffee that I didn't even particularly want, having just completed the most awkward and cold business transaction of my life, with the person I thought I'd marry someday. The irony wasn't lost on me that I'd just paid $420 for the privilege of confirming that Elodie had completely moved on from our relationship. Trevor was probably upstairs right now, probably wondering why she'd been gone for so long, probably having no idea that her ex-boyfriend was downstairs making a fool of himself with overpriced coffee beans. I loaded the remaining bags into my car, and sat in the driver's seat for a few minutes, staring up at Elodie's apartment window. The lights were on, and I could see shadows moving around inside. 2 shadows. I started the engine and drove home, trying not to think about what those shadows might be doing together. When I got back to my own apartment, I looked at the 6 bags of coffee sitting on my kitchen counter, and realized something that should have been obvious from the beginning. I don't even drink that much coffee. I'm more of a tea person actually. Always have been. But Elodie loved coffee. She was the one who'd insisted we buy that expensive espresso machine. She was the one who dragged me to coffee shops every weekend, teaching me about different roasts and brewing methods. She was the one who'd made our Sunday morning coffee ritual feel like the most important part of the week. I'd bought those 12 bags of coffee, because somewhere in my mind, I was still thinking like someone who was in a relationship with a coffee lover. But I wasn't in that relationship anymore, and apparently, neither was she. That evening, Elodie posted a video on her Instagram story that made my stomach drop to the floor. In the video, a man I assumed was Trevor was carefully preparing an elaborate breakfast spread on what looked like her kitchen counter. He was methodically arranging fresh pastries, cutting fruit into perfect little pieces, and brewing coffee in a French press that I definitely didn't recognize. The camera panned to show Elodie sitting at her dining table in a silk robe, smiling and looking absolutely radiant. Trevor brought the coffee over to her, and she closed her eyes and inhaled the aroma like it was the most wonderful thing in the world. The video ended with her taking a sip and giving him a thumbs up with this bright, genuine smile that I remembered from our early days together. I stared at my phone screen for way too long, then quietly liked the video and turned off my phone. I sat there staring at the 6 bags of coffee on my counter, and somehow they looked even more ridiculous than they had an hour ago. I had expected Elodie to move on eventually. I just didn't think it would happen so quickly, and I definitely didn't expect her to find someone who seemed to understand her morning coffee ritual better than I ever had. When we'd been forced to break up 3 months ago, Elodie had clung to my jacket with tears streaming down her face, looking up at me with red, puffy eyes and saying, "Jayson, if you even think about finding someone else, I will never forgive you. Ever." She'd promised that she would wait for me forever, that what we had was worth fighting for, that she'd rather be alone for the rest of her life than settle for someone who wasn't me. I had believed every word she said because her tears seemed so genuine, and because I wanted to believe her so desperately. But 6 months later, here she was with Trevor, and from the looks of that Instagram story, they had their own morning routine that seemed infinitely more sophisticated and romantic than anything she and I had ever shared. I picked up one of the coffee bags and examined it closely. The label said it was a rare Colombian blend that cost $45 per bag. I opened it and smelled the beans, trying to figure out what made them so special. They smelled like coffee. Good coffee, I guess, but still just coffee. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. It occurred to me that I had never actually asked Elodie what kind of coffee she preferred. I'd always just bought whatever looked expensive or interesting at the store. I'd assumed that as long as it was good quality, she'd appreciate the gesture. But watching Trevor's careful preparation in that video, I realized that maybe there was a whole world of coffee knowledge that I'd never bothered to learn. I opened my laptop and started typing a message to Elodie. "Hey, I was wondering if the Colombian blend I got you was the kind you actually like, or if you prefer a different roast profile." But as I finished typing the message, I suddenly stopped. Elodie had a new boyfriend now. Trevor was probably the one choosing her coffee now, and he obviously knew what he was doing. As her ex-boyfriend, it probably wasn't appropriate for me to be asking about her coffee preferences anymore. I slowly deleted the message, character by character, and when I deleted the last word, I noticed that Elodie's profile picture had changed. Instead of the solo photo she'd had for months, it was now a picture of her and Trevor at what looked like a farmer's market, both of them holding coffee cups and laughing at something off camera. That's when I received a message from Elodie that made my heart skip a beat. We should delete each other from social media. I don't want Trevor to get the wrong idea about us staying in touch. I stared at those 2 sentences for what felt like an hour. My first instinct was to reply with "Okay, that makes sense," but something held me back. Maybe it was the fear of seeing that red exclamation mark that would appear when someone blocks you. Maybe it was just not being ready for that level of finality. After thinking about it for a long time, I decided not to reply at all. I also decided not to block or delete Elodie myself. I figured I'd just leave things as they were and let her handle it however she wanted to. After all, she'd probably already deleted me anyway, so whether I deleted her or not seemed pretty irrelevant at this point. I got up from my couch and went to the kitchen to make myself some tea. As I waited for the water to boil, I looked at those 6 bags of coffee again and felt a wave of something that might have been embarrassment, or regret, or just plain sadness. The truth was that I had spent $420 on coffee that I didn't want, for a person who didn't want me, to try to recreate something that had probably never been as special as I thought it was in the first place. When the tea was ready, I sat back down on my couch and checked my phone one more time. There was a new message from Elodie that just said, "Testing." She sent it and then immediately deleted it, like she was checking whether I could still see her messages. I was confused, so I sent back a question mark. The next second, a red exclamation mark appeared in our chat window. She had blocked me. I sat there holding my phone, staring at that red exclamation mark, for what felt like a very long time. At least now I knew where I stood. Elodie had moved on. She had Trevor, and she was serious about cutting all ties with me. 10 minutes later, I decided to send one final message to the chat that had blocked me. "I guess it's time for me to move on too. Take care of yourself." I hit send, expecting to see another red exclamation mark, but the message went through normally. No error message, no red exclamation mark. I stared at my phone screen in confusion for a moment, then realized what had happened. Elodie hadn't actually deleted me as a contact. She had put me on her block list temporarily, then removed me from it after checking to see if I was still there. On her end, it probably showed that I was typing for a long time. Eventually she sent "whatever you want." I looked at that message and frowned slightly. I clicked on her profile and stared at it for a while, then made a decision that surprised even me. I deleted Elodie as a contact. Just like drinking too much coffee can keep you awake when you should be sleeping, holding on to Elodie was keeping me awake when I should have been resting and moving forward with my life. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd made peace with the situation, accepted that Elodie had moved on, and decided to focus on my own life for a change. So when my coworker Nelson mentioned that his sister might be interested in meeting someone, I didn't immediately change the subject like I had been doing for months. Instead, I surprised myself by saying, "You know what, Nelson? I think I'm ready to meet new people. Tell me about her." Nelson's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? Oh man, Camille is going to be so excited. She's been single for a while now, and she's always asking me if I know any decent guys." That same day, Nelson gave Camille my number, and she texted me a simple but friendly message. "Hi, Jayson. Nelson told me a lot about you. Would you like to get coffee sometime and see if we click?" The coffee suggestion made me laugh, considering everything that had happened with Elodie, but I figured it was as good a place to start as any. I replied, "Coffee sounds great. I know a good place downtown." But Camille surprised me by saying, "Actually, I was thinking we could try that new place in Millbrook Heights. I heard they have incredible pastries, and I have a serious weakness for good pastries." Millbrook Heights was on the opposite side of town from where Elodie lived, which felt like a good thing. A fresh start in a completely different part of the city seemed appropriate. The next evening, I met Camille at a little cafe called the Daily Grind. She was already sitting at a corner table when I arrived, and she stood up to wave at me with a genuine smile that immediately put me at ease. Camille was different from Elodie, in almost every way. Where Elodie was sharp and intense, Camille was warm and easygoing. Where Elodie always seemed to be analyzing every word you said, Camille just listened and responded naturally. And where Elodie had very specific preferences about everything, Camille seemed genuinely curious about trying new things. I have to confess something, Camille said after we'd been talking for about 20 minutes. Nelson told me you just got out of a serious relationship, and I was worried this might be too soon for you. I appreciated her directness. It's been 3 months, I said. And honestly, I think I needed to get out of my own head for a while. This is nice. Camille smiled. Good. Because I was really hoping we'd have a good time tonight. We talked easily for almost 2 hours. Camille told me about her work as a graphic designer, her obsession with hiking, and her ongoing battle to keep plants alive in her apartment. I found myself relaxing in a way I hadn't in months, just enjoying a normal conversation with someone who seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. When Camille excused herself to use the restroom, I pulled out my phone to check the time, and saw that I had 3 missed calls from an unknown number. Before I could think about it too much, the phone rang again. I answered without thinking. Hello? Jayson. It was Elodie's voice, but she sounded different, strained, almost panicked. Elodie, how did you get this number? I thought we weren't supposed to be in contact anymore. I saw you, she said, and her voice was shaking slightly. I saw you at the daily grind with some girl. My blood went cold. You saw me where? I was driving by and I saw you through the window. Who is she, Jayson? How long have you been seeing her? I looked around the cafe, suddenly feeling exposed and uncomfortable. Elodie, that's not really any of your business anymore, is it? You have Trevor, remember? That's different, Elodie said quickly. Trevor and we're just taking things slow. We're not serious or anything. I almost laughed. Not serious? You posted a video of him making you breakfast. You changed your profile picture to a photo of the two of you. That seemed pretty serious to me. Those posts don't mean anything, Elodie said. And now she definitely sounded desperate. I was just trying to make you jealous. I wanted to see if you still cared about me. I sat there in stunned silence as the full weight of what she was saying hit me. You wanted to make me jealous? Elodie, you told me you were with someone else. You said I should stop trying to win you back. I know, but I didn't think you'd actually give up so easily. I thought you'd fight for me, or at least try to win me back. I brought you 12 bags of expensive coffee, I said, probably louder than I should have in a public place. How is that giving up easily? Coffee isn't fighting for someone, Jayson. Coffee is just coffee. I looked toward the restroom, hoping Camille would come back soon so I could end this bizarre conversation. Elodie, I don't understand what you want from me. You said you were with Trevor. You blocked me on social media. You told me we should delete each other. I never said I was with Trevor, Elodie said. I said I was seeing someone else. There's a difference. What kind of difference? Trevor is just a friend who's been helping me through our breakup. The breakfast thing, the coffee, all of that. It's just him being nice. He knows I've been struggling since you and I broke up. I felt like I was losing my mind. So Trevor isn't your boyfriend? No. God, Jayson, how could you think I'd replace you that quickly? I told you I'd wait for you forever. But you also told me to stop trying to win you back with sentimental gestures. I was testing you, Elodie's voice cracked. I wanted to see if you'd fight for me anyway. I wanted to see if you really loved me. At that moment, Camille returned from the restroom, and when she saw the expression on my face, she immediately looked concerned. She mouthed everything okay, and I held up one finger to ask her to wait. Elodie, I said quietly into the phone. I have to go. Wait, don't hang up. We need to talk about this. Who is that girl you're with? Are you trying to make me jealous now? I'm not trying to make anyone jealous. I'm trying to move on with my life, like you told me to. But I didn't mean it. I was just scared that you didn't really want me anymore. I looked at Camille, who was sitting across from me, looking patient but obviously confused about what was happening. She deserved better than being caught in the middle of whatever this was with Elodie. I have to go, I repeated. We can talk about this later if you want, but not right now. I hung up before Elodie could respond, and looked at Camille with what I'm sure was a very apologetic expression. I'm really sorry about that, I said. That was my ex, and apparently things are more complicated than I thought they were. Camille nodded understandingly. Do you need to go deal with that? No, I said, surprising myself with how certain I sounded. Whatever Elodie's going through, she's going to have to figure it out on her own. I'm here with you, and I'd like to finish our conversation if that's okay. Camille smiled, and I felt something that might have been relief, or gratitude, or just the simple pleasure of being with someone who didn't make everything feel like a test or a game. But even as I tried to focus on Camille for the rest of the evening, I couldn't shake the feeling that Elodie wasn't going to let this go easily. A week later, Nelson had convinced me to join him and Camille for dinner at this trendy new restaurant called Copper and Sage that had just opened in downtown Millbrook Heights. Camille had been excited about trying their seasonal menu, and honestly, I was looking forward to a normal evening with normal people doing normal things. We were halfway through our appetizers when I heard a laugh that made my blood freeze. That unmistakable sound that I'd heard 1,000 times over 3 years, now cutting through the ambient noise of the restaurant like a knife. I turned around slowly, hoping I was wrong, but there they were. Elodie and Trevor, being seated at a table directly in my line of sight, maybe 15 feet away from where we were sitting. Elodie spotted me immediately. Our eyes met across the restaurant, and I watched her expression shift from surprise to something that looked almost predatory. She whispered something to Trevor, who glanced over at our table with obvious curiosity. "Everything okay?" Camille asked, following my gaze. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "That's my ex," I said quietly. "And the guy she said was just a friend." Nelson looked over, and immediately understood the situation. "Do you want to leave? We can go somewhere else." But before I could answer, Elodie was already walking over to our table with Trevor trailing behind her. She had this bright fake smile on her face that I recognized as her public performance mode. "Jayson, what a crazy coincidence," Elodie said loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "I didn't expect to see you here." She looked directly at Camille with undisguised curiosity. "And you must be the girl from the coffee shop." "I'm Elodie, Jayson's ex-girlfriend." Camille stood up politely and extended her hand. "I'm Camille, nice to meet you." "Likewise," Elodie said, but her handshake lasted just a beat too long, like she was sizing up the competition. Trevor stepped forward awkwardly. "Hi, I'm Trevor, sorry to interrupt your dinner." "Actually," Elodie said before anyone else could speak, "there's a bit of a wait for tables tonight. Would you mind if we joined you? I'd love to get to know Jayson's new friend." The way she said friend made it clear she was testing whether Camille and I were actually dating or just hanging out. Nelson and Camille exchanged glances, obviously uncomfortable, but too polite to refuse. "Of course," Camille said graciously. "There's plenty of room." As soon as Elodie and Trevor sat down, the entire dynamic of the table changed. Elodie positioned herself directly across from me, while Trevor sat next to her looking like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "So Camille," Elodie said with that same fake brightness, "how long have you and Jayson been seeing each other?" "We've been on a few dates," Camille replied diplomatically. "We're just getting to know each other." "That's sweet," Elodie said. "Jayson is great at the getting to know you phase. He's very attentive in the beginning." I felt Nelson tense up beside me, and I could see Camille processing what Elodie was implying. "Elodie," I said quietly, "maybe we should just enjoy our dinners." "Oh, I'm just making conversation," Elodie said innocently. "I'm curious about Camille. She seems very different from your usual type." "What's his usual type?" Camille asked, and I could hear a slight edge creeping into her voice. Elodie leaned forward conspiratorially. "Well, Jayson has always been attracted to women who are a bit more high maintenance. He likes the challenge, you know, the drama." Trevor cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Elodie, maybe we should order some food." But Elodie ignored him completely. She was focused entirely on Camille now, like a predator who had identified her target. "Has he told you about his little coffee obsession?" Elodie continued. "He spent over $400 on coffee beans last week, trying to win me back. It was actually kind of pathetic." I felt my face burn with embarrassment, but Camille surprised me by laughing softly. "Actually, he told me about that," Camille said calmly. "It sounds like he was trying to hold on to something that was already over." Elodie's smile faltered for just a moment. "Well, it's not exactly over. Jayson and I have a lot of history together. 3 years. You don't just throw that away for a few coffee dates." "You're right," Camille said.
3 years is a long time. It must be really hard to let go of someone you care about that much. I could see Elodie trying to figure out if Camille was being sincere or sarcastic. It is hard, Elodie said slowly, especially when you know the other person is just rebounding with the first available option. The table went completely silent. Nelson put down his fork and stared at Elodie in disbelief. Trevor looked mortified. Camille's cheeks flushed red, but she kept her composure. Elodie, I said, my voice low and warning. What? I'm just being honest, Elodie said. Camille seems lovely, but let's be realistic about what this is. That's when Trevor finally spoke up, his voice shaky but determined. Elodie, stop. This isn't fair to anyone. Elodie whipped around to face him. Trevor, this doesn't concern you. Actually, it does, Trevor said, his voice getting stronger. Because you've been using me to make Jayson jealous for weeks, and now you're being cruel to someone who doesn't deserve it. The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet around our table. Elodie's face went pale as she realized what Trevor had just revealed in front of everyone. Trevor, she said sharply, you don't know what you're talking about. Yes, I do, Trevor said. I've been trying to help you get over Jayson for months, but all you've done is manipulate the situation to try to get him back. The breakfast posts, the coffee shop thing, even coming here tonight, it's all been about him. Elodie looked around the table desperately, her carefully constructed facade crumbling in real time. That's not true, she said, but her voice was shaking now. Trevor and I are together. Tell them, Trevor. Trevor shook his head sadly. We're not together, Elodie. We never were. You made that very clear from the beginning. The silence at our table was deafening. Elodie sat there staring at Trevor like he had just slapped her across the face. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't hide the fact that all the color had drained from her cheeks. How could you do this to me? She whispered to Trevor, her voice barely audible. Do what? Tell the truth, Trevor said, his voice getting stronger with each word. Elodie, I've been your emotional support system for 3 months. I've made you breakfast when you were crying about Jayson. I've listened to you plan these elaborate schemes to make him jealous. I pretended to be your boyfriend on social media, because you said it would help you move on. But you never wanted to move on, did you? Elodie's hands were shaking now. She looked around the table desperately, as if searching for someone who might take her side, but found only uncomfortable stares. That's not how it was, she said, but even she seemed to know how unconvincing she sounded. Then how was it? I asked quietly. The question came out before I could stop myself. Elodie turned to look at me. And for the first time since she'd sat down, I saw her real expression. Not the fake brightness, not the calculated manipulation, just raw fear and desperation. I was scared, she said, her voice cracking. I was scared that you didn't really want me back. So you decided to test me by pretending to have a boyfriend. I thought if you believed I had moved on, you'd realize what you were losing. I thought you'd fight harder for me. Camille shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and I realized how unfair this entire situation was to her. She'd gotten caught in the middle of something that had nothing to do with her. Elodie, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I brought you 12 bags of expensive coffee. I stood outside your apartment for an hour. How is that not fighting for you?
Coffee isn't love, Jayson. Elodie's voice rose sharply, causing nearby diners to turn and stare. Coffee is just a thing you buy. I wanted you to fight for me, not just throw money at the situation. Then what did you want me to do? I wanted you to refuse to accept that I was with someone else. I wanted you to tell Trevor to back off. I wanted you to make some grand gesture that proved you couldn't live without me. Trevor let out a bitter laugh. And what was I supposed to do in this fantasy? Just disappear? I never meant for it to go this far, Elodie said, tears starting to flow down her cheeks. I thought Jayson would figure it out. I thought he'd see through it and call me on it. But I did see through it, I said. That's why I deleted you from my contacts. That's why I started dating other people. Elodie's face crumpled completely at those words. You deleted me, after you blocked me, and then unblocked me to test if I was still there. Yes, I deleted you. But I unblocked you right away. I was just checking if you cared enough to notice. The absurdity of the situation was becoming overwhelming. I looked at Camille, who was sitting there with this expression of complete disbelief, like she couldn't quite process what she was witnessing. "Elodie," I said slowly, "do you understand how exhausting this is? The games, the tests, the manipulation? I can't spend my life trying to guess what you really want when you won't just tell me." "I told you what I wanted," Elodie sobbed. "I told you I'd wait for you forever. But you also told me to stop trying to win you back with sentimental gestures. You told me you were with someone else. You blocked me on social media. How was I supposed to know that you meant the opposite of everything you were saying?" Elodie buried her face in her hands and started crying harder. "I don't know. I was just so scared that you'd stopped loving me. I thought if I made you jealous, you'd prove that you still cared." "By doing what exactly? By fighting Trevor? By making a scene? By refusing to respect your choices?" "Yes." Elodie looked up with tears streaming down her face. "I wanted you to be so devastated by the thought of losing me that you'd do anything to get me back." Trevor stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to this anymore," he said. "Elodie, you need help. This isn't how healthy relationships work." He looked at me with something that might have been sympathy. "I'm sorry you had to deal with this for 3 years. I've only been dealing with it for 3 months, and it's been exhausting." Trevor walked away, leaving Elodie sitting there sobbing into her hands. "I just wanted to know if you really loved me," she whispered through her tears. "I needed to know that I mattered to you more than anything else." I felt a wave of something that might have been pity, or sadness, or just pure exhaustion. "Elodie, the fact that I'm sitting here having this conversation instead of walking away should tell you something about how much you mattered to me." "Mattered?" Elodie looked up sharply. Past tense. I glanced at Camille, who had been sitting through this entire emotional hurricane with remarkable grace, and then back at Elodie. "Yeah," I said quietly. Past tense. The word mattered hung in the air between us like a death sentence. Elodie stared at me with this look of complete devastation, as if she'd just watched someone die right in front of her. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "You can't mean that." But I did mean it, and I think she could see it in my face. For the first time in our entire relationship, I wasn't going to take back something I'd said just to make her feel better. Camille quietly stood up from the table. "I think I should give you two some privacy to finish this conversation," she said diplomatically. "No," I said firmly, standing up as well. "We're done here. There's nothing left to finish." I looked at Elodie one last time, and what I saw there was a woman who had spent so much energy playing games that she'd forgotten how to just be honest about what she wanted. The tragedy wasn't that our relationship was over. The tragedy was that it had probably been over for months, maybe even longer, but neither of us had been brave enough to admit it. "Elodie," I said, my voice gentler than it had been all evening, "I hope you find what you're looking for, but I can't be part of these games anymore." Camille and I left the restaurant together, walking out into the cool evening air. For a few blocks, neither of us said anything. I was processing everything that had just happened, and I imagined Camille was trying to figure out what she'd gotten herself into by agreeing to go out with me. "Well," Camille finally said as we reached her car, "that was definitely not what I was expecting from dinner tonight." "I'm so sorry," I said. "You shouldn't have had to sit through that. Elodie had no right to drag you into our mess." Camille leaned against her car and looked at me thoughtfully. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you still love her?" The question caught me off guard, not because I didn't know the answer, but because the answer was more complicated than I'd expected it to be. "I love the person I thought she was," I said slowly. "But I don't think that person ever really existed. I think I was in love with the idea of someone who would choose me every day, and I was so focused on that idea that I ignored all the ways she was showing me that she didn't actually want the same kind of relationship I did." Camille nodded. "That makes sense. And for what it's worth, I think you handled that whole situation really well. A lot of guys would have either gotten angry or gotten sucked back into the drama. 3 months ago I probably would have," I admitted. "But tonight, watching her manipulate Trevor, watching her try to hurt you just to get to me, I realized that I don't want to be with someone who thinks love is supposed to be a constant battle." Camille smiled. "So what do you want?" "I want to be with someone who says what they mean, and means what they say. Someone who doesn't think I need to prove my love by being jealous, or possessive, or dramatic. Someone who wants to build something together instead of just testing whether I'm worthy of them." "That sounds pretty reasonable," Camille said. "Is that the kind of relationship you'd be interested in?" I asked. "Are you asking me out on a second date, Jayson?" "I guess I am. If you're still interested after witnessing all of that." Camille was quiet for a moment, and I found myself holding my breath waiting for her answer. I am interested, she said finally. But I think we should take things slow. Not because of Elodie, but because I want to make sure we're getting to know each other for the right reasons. I felt relief wash over me. That sounds perfect. Camille got in her car and drove away, and I walked the 6 blocks back to my apartment feeling lighter than I had in months. When I got home, I made myself a cup of tea, and sat on my couch, looking at those 6 bags of coffee that were still sitting on my kitchen counter. I realized that I'd been holding on to those bags for the same reason I'd been holding on to Elodie, because letting go felt like admitting failure. But sometimes letting go isn't about failure. Sometimes it's about recognizing that you've outgrown something that used to fit. The next morning, I loaded all 6 bags of coffee into my car, and drove to the community center downtown. They had a breakfast program for people who needed a good meal, and a warm place to start their day, and I figured they could probably use some premium coffee more than I could. The volunteer coordinator, an older woman named Mrs. Patterson, looked at me like I was crazy when I explained what I was donating. "This is at least $200 worth of coffee," she said, examining the bags. "Are you sure you want to give all this away?" "I'm sure," I said. "I hope someone gets more enjoyment out of it than I would." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "Well, the folks who come in here for breakfast are going to think they've died and gone to heaven. Thank you." As I was walking back to my car, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, I wondered if it was Elodie trying to reach me from a different phone, but when I opened the message, it was from Trevor. "Hey, it's Trevor. I got your number from Camille's brother Nelson. I wanted to apologize for last night, and let you know that I told Elodie I can't help her with this anymore. I blocked her on everything. I thought you should know in case she tries to use me to get to you again." I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know. And thanks for finally telling the truth last night. I know that couldn't have been easy. It was way overdue." Trevor replied. "Good luck with Camille. She seems great. Thanks. Good luck to you too." That afternoon, I got a call from Nelson at work. "Dude," he said, "Camille told me about last night. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm actually better than okay," I said. "I think I finally understand what I want in a relationship, and it's not what I had with Elodie. Because my sister really likes you, but she's worried that you're not over your ex. Tell your sister that I'm very much over my ex, and I'd like to take her hiking this weekend if she's interested." Nelson laughed. "I'll pass along the message." That weekend, Camille and I went hiking in the state park about an hour outside the city. We talked about everything: our families, our jobs, our hopes for the future, our fears about getting older. It was the kind of conversation I'd never been able to have with Elodie, because she was always too focused on testing the strength of our connection to actually enjoy it. As we sat on a rock overlooking the valley, sharing a thermos of hot chocolate that Camille had brought, I realized that this was what I'd been looking for all along. Not the dramatic highs and lows of a relationship built on uncertainty and jealousy, but the quiet satisfaction of being with someone who chose to be there simply because they enjoyed my company. "What are you thinking about?" Camille asked. "I'm thinking about how different this feels from what I thought I wanted," I said. "Different how?" "Better, easier, more real." Camille smiled and leaned against my shoulder. "I like easy and real." "Me too." 3 weeks later, I was cleaning out my apartment when I found a package outside my door. Inside was a bag of that expensive Colombian coffee I'd given to Elodie, along with a handwritten note. "Jayson, I've been thinking about what you said at the restaurant, and I think you're right. I did turn our relationship into a series of tests instead of just enjoying what we had. I don't know how to not do that, but I'm going to try to figure it out. I hope you and Camille are happy together. She seems like someone who appreciates you for who you are instead of who she wants you to be. I'm sorry it took me so long to learn how to do that. Take care of yourself. E. I sat there holding the note for a long time, feeling something that might have been sadness for the relationship we could have had if we'd both been more honest about what we wanted. But mostly, I felt grateful that we'd both finally found the courage to stop pretending that we could fix something that had been broken from the beginning. I made myself a cup of coffee using Elodie's beans, and it tasted exactly like what it was. Expensive, well made, but ultimately just coffee. Nothing more, nothing less. Just like our relationship had been just a relationship. Not a fairy tale, not a tragedy, just two people who wanted different things and took too long to admit it. The lesson I learned from all of this wasn't complicated.
Love shouldn't require you to prove your worth over and over again. The right person will choose you not because you've passed their tests, but because being with you feels like coming home. And sometimes, letting go of what you thought you wanted is the only way to make room for what you actually need. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.